everybody, this is Carl, and I'm going live today to talk to you about choke points and kind of, I guess, some ways that you can use the analogy of a choke point to help you improve your personal life, but mostly your business life. So my favorite choke point in the world is a timer, right? So, and you've seen these, right? This is an hourglass. And just as the sands through an hourglass, these are the days of your lives or something like that. Anyway, so this is the choke point, right there. And assuming that this is actually sealed, which it appears to be sealed, then the sand is not going to get clogged up. No moisture is going to get in there, and it's going to flow very nice. But if there were any kind of a clog, any kind of debris, anything other than pure, beautiful white sand, that would be a choke point. Something could fall in there, and then it would be stopped up, and you wouldn't be able to get the rest of the sand through. So something similar can happen in your business. And the most common thing that I see among business owners who are the choke point in their business is that they don't recognize it. And I've told the story before of when my brother Manuel was put in charge of my business, when I made him the president of KP Enterprises. One of the first things that he did was to create a status in our PSA that was called Waiting on Carl. It was basically a way to say, Carl is the choke point, right? So if you're waiting on Carl, the more things that are in that status of waiting on Carl, the bigger problem that we have in our business. And so my job was to restructure the business, restructure my specific role so that I was not the choke point for every single thing. You know, some of you get carried away because you are what we used to call anal retentive. I don't know what they call it now. I still call it anal retentive. But if you are too detail oriented, then the problem is you have to approve the font on the envelopes before you send out a mailing to 1,000 people, 900 of whom are never going to look at the envelope. Don't care about the font. Don't care what color it is. Don't care that you personally approve the color of the font on the envelope, right? None of that stuff matters. There's a point at which you have to say, look, I've hired good people, and when the quality is above this line, let them do their jobs. That's why I hired them. A lot of times you get tied down into this minutia. No, I have to approve every contract. I have to approve every service ticket. I have to make sure that I approve the invoicing before it gets closed. And here's what happens when you take yourself out of that choke point. You make more money. And why do you make more money? Well, it starts with you're probably giving away a lot of money. And as soon as you are taking yourself out of the process, you make more money. One of the best things I ever did in my managed service business was turn over the invoicing to the front office. It used to be all these tickets had come through, hundreds and hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 tickets a month. And I would approve the invoicing on every single one of them. And then there's a couple of problems with that. But the biggest problem was that I would say, oh, yeah, you know, Janet's been with us for like 15 years. Let's not charge her for that. And, you know I was on site for an hour, but really probably did, 50 minutes worth of work. So I'm going to charge him for 45 minutes. And so I cut 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. And I would actually reduce my own invoicing before it went out, thinking that I need to justify all this stuff in my head, which is the only place it actually really existed was in my head. And so eventually I just turned it over to the front office and decided what we're going to do is send the invoicing out. If people complain, if they say, hey, it looks like you didn't work the whole 60 minutes, okay, fine. Then I'll give them their 15 minutes back, or I'll give them some dollar amount of money back. What happened is nobody ever complained about an invoice. Nobody ever challenged the number of hours. Nobody ever questioned anything. They just paid the bill. So simply turning it over, and Jennifer was my front office person at the time, letting Jennifer send out the invoicing increased our revenue dramatically because I was giving away, sometimes 10, 15 hours a month. And, at $150 an hour, pretty soon it adds up. It adds up to enough to actually pay for an administrative assistant. So getting me out of that choke point made a big difference. It made a difference in the service board. It made a difference in my invoicing. And it also allowed me to just spend my time doing something else. This analogy works for your clients as well, because they all say, well, I want to, have my own server, or you want to have your own server because you think it's better. And primarily you think it's better because you came from an old school world. In the real world, it's not necessarily better, right? People say, well, what happens if the cloud goes down? I literally had this conversation this morning. There was a time when people didn't want to base their businesses on something that required electricity, because what if the electricity goes out? I don't want to be relying on the telephone because, what if the telephone goes out? Then eventually in the 90s, people had the conversation. Oh, I don't want to base my business on the internet because what if the internet goes out? And today it's, well, I don't want to base my business on the cloud because what if the cloud goes out? The beautiful thing about the cloud, when you move things up to the cloud, is you have moved something off of your local network where you have lots and lots of choke points, and you've moved it to a place where, with luck, there is no choke point. In many ways in IT consulting, our job has always been to move the choke point, right? If the choke point is memory, we add more memory. If the choke point is the network, we increase the speed of the network. If the choke point is storage space, we have to increase the storage space. If the choke point is processor time, we have to get faster processors. And we move our way up, 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 up. And eventually, we want to move the choke point off of our wire, right? In other words, I want the choke point outside the client's office. I want it to be up in the internet somewhere. Because here's the deal with a server. That's a server right there. All your data's on one server, that's your choke point. All that data goes through one processor, that's your choke point. All the data's on one storage array. Even if you have RAID, if the storage array goes out, that client is down because that's the choke point. So then you move it up to the cloud, and now you've eliminated the choke point. At least you've eliminated it on site. You still have to figure out where it is. Is the choke point the processor speed of the hosted server or something else? Is it that you have a bandwidth issue, right? Where is it? Wherever it is, you got to find that choke point and you got to deal with it. But that will dramatically improve each client's performance as you move that choke point. And I talk about this in Cloud Services in a Month. But one of the best things that you can do for your clients is go find their choke points. And it's a simple thing to do. Like, take your laptop on site, look at what the client is paying for internet service. And they say, oh, well, I'm paying for a 250 meg connection, or I'm paying for a 100 meg connection. Okay, cool. Top into the back of the router and find out what speed you're actually getting. If the router doesn't have a fast enough port, you're going to be limited. Then say, okay, that's great. Now what's my speed on the other side of the firewall? If the firewall doesn't have enough memory, isn't fast enough, doesn't have a newer chipset that can do deep packet inspection at 100 megs, well, it might drop down significantly. And so you're paying for 100 or you're paying for 250, but you might have significantly less. A lot of firewalls have an external port that's 100 meg, which sounds like a lot, unless you've got a 250 meg line, right? So there might be a choke point there. There might be a choke point on the switches. There might be a choke point on all kinds of things. It's very common, once again, with the server, that the server has the slowest network card in the office. Even if you've got 200 meg NICs and you've teamed them and you've tuned them, guess what? If everybody else has got a gigabit connection, then the server is your choke point. And that happens very frequently, right? We go around, we update all the machines in the office, and then the server is the slowest thing on going. So think about that. Think about what you can do for your clients to help them eliminate the choke points in their technology. And again, it might be something that you really like. If you really like servers, you really want to be selling servers, that's cool. Just acknowledge that that makes you the choke point once again, because you are relying on something where you prefer, you love, you want to sell old school technology. And that may not be what the world looks like today. So, think about how you can eliminate choke points in your standard operating procedures, in every single thing you do, in your technology, in the way that you deal with all the things in your office. If you're not making enough sales, is that because you're the choke point? Is that because you're not making the calls and you don't want to hire somebody else to make them for you? If you are not delivering enough services, is that because you're the choke point and you have to design all the projects, or you have to deliver the services yourself, or nobody could possibly do it as well as you can, so everything has to wait on you, right? Get out of your own way and you'll find that your company is going to be a lot more profitable. So I've got a lot of tips like this, and I have to say they're over at the Small Biz Thoughts community. So if you go check out the Small Biz Thoughts technology community at smallbizthoughts.org, you're going to find that I've eliminated a choke point there as well. Kara is the new manager for the community, and her job is to help you find everything that you want to find. So I'm getting out of the picture there. I will obviously help you in any way I can, but if you're looking for something there and you can't find it, email Kara and she will take care of you. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate all the thumbs up and so forth. And if this struck a chord with you, if you agree or disagree, put a note in the comments. Thank you very much, and thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.